Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core is not just a set of components. It's a rich and powerful ecosystem of components and features that enhance your applications with common functionality that you would normally have to build yourself. Features like globalization and localization, accessibility of the included components, and Telerik document processing, a set of UI-independent cross-platform libraries that enable you to process content between different formats and work with archive files too. Let's take an introductory look at some of these features now. If your application is destined for an international audience, you're going to want to implement internationalization, or I-18N, to make your application support different languages and regions, and the Telerik UI ASP.NET Core Suite allows you to do that. In this lesson, I'll show you how to implement globalization in your app and how to match the client-side culture settings to the server-side culture settings. Let's take a look at our code, and as an example, I'm going to add a new component, a throwaway component, to our dashboard. So I'm going to open up Pages and then dashboard.cshtml, and let's head over here to where the buttons are. It doesn't really matter where you put it because this will not stick around. What I want to use is the Kendo date time picker here, and let's just give it any name. And when I run this code, you'll see a new component on our dashboard. And here we go. It looks a little bit out of place here, of course, but you could theoretically change these time span preset buttons to a date range, for example, in which case this would be handy. So here's another component we can look at as well. This is a date time picker, and as you can see, when I open it, the dates are using the default culture. In my case, it's United States English, and the times are AM and PM, so a 12-hour clock. Now, what if we wanted to use Spanish as our culture here in this application? Well, our Telerik UI library actually comes with a bunch of languages already preset. If we open up www.root and then go to lib, Kendo, you'll see two folders here, cultures and messages. Cultures is the globalization files, and the localization ones are in the messages folder. Let's take a look at cultures here. I wanted to use Spanish, so I want to find a Spanish language, but I also want to find the region, and I'm going to use Spanish in Spain, so ES is what I'm looking for. There it is. This is the file I want to use. So what do we do with this file? Well, we're going to use this file in addition to the JavaScript that we already have defined. So let's go down to Pages again, open up Shared, and then layout.cshtml. This is where we defined our previous Kendo JavaScript files right over here. So after our final Kendo ASP.NET MVC.min file, I'm going to drop in that Spanish file. I'm going to drag this right in here, just like that. Now, adding this file doesn't automatically activate translations for all our Telerik UI components. So if we take a look at the calendar again and the time display, they're still using the default culture. So we need to specify that we want to use Spanish, and we do that by triggering the culture function in the Kendo object. So open up a new script tag, and this has to come after the culture JavaScript. So Kendo.culture and the culture that we want to use. So in our case, it's ES-ES. Now, when I run my code and we take a look at the calendar dropdown, you'll see that it is using in the Spanish language. And the time dropdown will also have the 24-hour clock, because that's what's used in Spain. Now, this component is not the only one that's affected. Because our layout affects all pages and all components on it, you'll see that the chart actually inherits this new culture settings, and you can see the Spanish month names on the chart. Now, there's one gotcha here. You might want to translate more than just your Kendo components, and some components you render server-side. Let me give you a straightforward example here. Go back to dashboard again, and let's say we wanted to render a date. So I'm going to create a new div here, and I'm just going to render date time UTC now to string. So this will be rendered on the server and then drawn on the client side. And therefore, this should actually show our server side culture settings. Let's take a look at that. 9/1/2021, 6:22 p.m. So you can see that we have a mismatch now between our client-side Kendo components, which are all using the Spanish culture settings, and the server side, which are using the default United States English settings. How do we get these to match up? Well, in order to do that, we're going to have to go to Startup and find where we configure our application, which is in the Configure method. Here's where we're going to specify the cultures that we want to support. I'm going to do that as the first thing in the method right here. So I'm going to create a new array of culture info objects. So I need to import that from System Globalization, and I'm going to specify ES as the culture I want to support. Furthermore, I'm going to set the request culture of every request, and I'm going to use Microsoft ASP.NET Core Localization namespace here for that. So this is going to set the supported UI cultures and the supported cultures. This is very Microsoft ASP.NET Core specific. So if you want to learn more information about this, you should check out the Microsoft documentation on how to set the culture on the server side. Now, when I run this, the application will actually now run under the Spanish culture and region settings. So all my server-side rendered components and therefore the date.toString function will be rendered in that culture. You can see that the date and the month and the time is 24 hours. And this is all using the Spanish culture. And of course, our client-side settings haven't changed, so that's still going to be the same. Now, if we wanted to synchronize these, so we don't have to change them in two different places. For example, well, what if we wanted to change this from Spain to something else? Well, we can match up what we have on the server side to the client side and pull in those client-side resources automatically based on whatever we set on the server. Let me show you what I mean. Here on layout.cshtml, we can get a hold of the culture that we set on the server and populate a variable called culture with that information. So system.globalization.cultureinfo, current culture to string will give us es-es in our case right now. And that'll be stored inside the culture variable, which we can now use over here to replace this part and also this part. So let's do that. Instead of this script right here, I'm going to comment that out. I'm going to use this string here. Let's give us more space here to see it. It's basically the same source, but instead we're using the URL content here to do a string replacement on that middle part where we have es. And over here in our script tag, instead of es, we can just use that variable culture. Let's take a look at that. And here we go. This is still using España, and our client-side components all match that culture as well, including the chart. If I now wanted to change everything to German in one place, I can go to Startup and then change this to DE-DE and this one DE-DE. Of course, I can always use one string for this instead of two, but you get the idea. Let's run this and take a look. And here we go. We now have German culture and language settings and on the calendar as well. If we take a look at the chart, same thing here. And you'll see that on the backlog, our grid inherited that culture as well. You might have noticed that we also have a messages folder in here. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to close up the cultures folder and open up the messages folder. This one will give us the localization settings for different components. So for example, if you had a numeric input and you wanted to use local display, this would be an example of displaying $24 with a decimal point in United States. But to display that in Europe, in our ES culture, and they use euros, the dollar symbol would be shown as euros, and the decimal point would be shown as a comma instead. And all you would need to do is drop in the Kendo messages ES min file after your culture file. And you can use the same kind of string replacement to synchronize that with the server like we did earlier. Now, besides translating and localizing your applications, some languages and cultures require right-to-left support. That is, displaying the components and their contents from right side of the screen to the left side of the screen. You can take a look at the globalization section in the documentation and then right-to-left support for configuration of RTL and also the supported UI components. These are all the components that support right-to-left. Websites and applications are accessible when they provide full control over their features by enabling users with disabilities to access their content by using assistive technologies or keyboard navigation. Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core supports accessibility features in their component set, and this includes standards such as Section 508, W3C Guidelines 2.1, WAI ARIA, which is the World Wide Web Consortium for Accessibility Specifications, and also keyboard navigation. Let's take a look at an example of how keyboard navigation would work, and we're going to take a look at the checkbox group in the demos as an example. So here is the checkbox group. We can check and uncheck these using the mouse, but also I can use my keyboard to select and change the position of the checkbox that I want to select. So for example, if I hit tab right now, you'll see the highlighted checkbox advances to the next one, and I can hit spacebar to go ahead and select. I can move back to the previous checkbox by holding down Shift and hitting tab and hitting spacebar again for the item I want to select. Of course, this only works for the items that are not disabled. You can see that the last item on the list here is disabled and I'm unable to tab into that item. I can go back to the ones I've selected and unselect them using the spacebar. If I open up developer tools using F12 here in Chrome and select my element inspector tool, I can hover over these items, and Chrome actually provides accessibility section as information about each UI element here. So you can see that the input I've selected has an accessibility description, and keyboard focusable has a green check mark next to it, suggesting that this is an accessible checkbox. To find the full list of components that are accessible, you can find the accessibility section in the documentation and then accessibility compliance. Here you'll see the list of components that are accessible and whether they allow keyboard navigation. And there's two more columns here, whether the component is Section 508 compliant, and the WCAG 2.1 score is here as well. So while this does not support all the components available in the suite, this does demonstrate Telerik's dedication to supporting accessibility for the disabled in their component set. Your ASP.NET Core application can tap into Telerik document processing, which is a powerful set of tools to be able to process PDF documents, spreadsheets, zip archives, Word documents, HTML files, rich text files, and text files, and more. Document processing libraries can be downloaded as extra NuGet packages from your Telerik NuGet feed. You can also download them from the downloads in your account. And the zip archive you've downloaded earlier, which you can also find in your account downloads, has a demos project already available for you to use. To find it, go to your downloads folder or wherever you downloaded the commercial zip file, open up the archive, and open up wrappers, ASP.NET Core, examples, ASP.NET.Core, Visual Studio folder, then Kendo MVC examples, and this is the project you want to open in Visual Studio. These are the same demos that you have available on the demos website, except here you can actually take a look at the code that runs the demos, so we can have a peek behind the scenes at the document processing demos. Here I'm looking at the demos project, and if we take a look at dependencies here, you'll see that we have Telerik documents dot, and then we have core, fixed, flow, spreadsheet. All these are meant to handle different types of documents. And we're going to specifically look at a demo here that handles unzipping archives, and that's related to this Telerik zip library. You can take a look at the code that's inside here and see examples of how this was implemented and leveraged. We're not going to be building this from scratch because there's quite a lot to it, but I did want to run this example and show you what happens and how to get started with it. So let's take a look at an example of how that works. I'm going to run this project, and here's the familiar demo site. We're going to go down to document processing, and you can see different examples of that. We're going to look at zip library. Let's scroll down just a little bit. Here we have a file selector. I'm going to select a file. Here's our download of the Telerik UI commercial archive. I'm going to select this file, and you'll see that the maximum allowed size is actually 4 megabytes. So I'm actually going to go into my downloads folder and create a new file here. Let's create a new text document. Let's call it alex1.txt. And once I've created this file, let's open it up and give it some content. Let's type in Alex Ziskin inside of there, and I'm going to save it and close it out. Now the file selector does look for zip files, so I need to go ahead and send to compressed in order to create a zip file out of it. Okay, this is 1 kilobyte, so that should be fine. Let's go back to our app and select a file, click alex1.zip, and it automatically uploads it and displays the content size, the contents that are inside that zip archive, with an ability to download each individual file as well, all in your browser. This is just a small example of the capabilities of document processing that comes with your Telerik subscription. You also have PDF processing here, and you can take a look at all the different options and demos that are available here. And take a look at the documentation for more information on this as well. Here's an example of us being able to generate different types of files using the data that's in this grid. And another example of converting from one file type to another file type. So here, in this instance, we've converted a Word document to an HTML document, and we were able to download it right here. If you have the DevCraft Complete or the DevCraft Ultimate license, then you also have Telerik reporting included in your license. And Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core supports visualizations that integrate with Telerik reporting. Now, you could purchase Telerik reporting separately as well, and with it you'll get .NET report designers and the report viewer controls, including the HTML5 report viewer that you can use with Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core. Let's take a look at how you can get more information on it. From the Telerik homepage, go to All Products and then select Telerik Reporting. If you go to Docs and Support, here you can search directly for Viewer. And this will take you directly to the overview for report viewers. This will show you different ways to integrate report viewers into your own applications. We have different types of applications we can use. Since ASP.NET Core is in web application, we can click on web applications. HTML5 report viewer is the one that we would use for our ASP.NET Core applications. This will give you the exact steps to follow and the prerequisites you need in order to integrate the report viewer into your application, server-side and client-side configurations. Now you can also preview the reports on the demo site. So if you head over to Demos, here you'll be able to preview a running instance of the report viewer. This is the report viewer right here, and you can preview its capabilities right here as well. So when you purchase Telerik reporting, you'll get this report viewer for HTML5 included as part of your license. If you already have a reporting license and you're interested to learn more, there is an entire course on reporting in this library. DevCraft Complete or DevCraft Ultimate licenses also include JustMock. JustMock is a fast and easy to use, feature-rich and cost-effective C# framework for creating mock objects. By isolating dependencies, JustMock allows you to focus on the relevant context and eliminate hard-to-configure obstacles when writing unit tests, resulting in higher productivity and better code. JustMock can be used to mock services when writing unit tests for ASP.NET Core applications or other dependencies that your code has in your business logic. And that's just one example of what JustMock can do. It also can be used to mock pretty much anything you need to test. Interfaces, virtual and abstract methods and properties, link queries, sealed classes, static classes, methods and properties, non-virtual methods and properties, non-public methods and types, delegates, generics, DLL imports, extension methods, ref return values and ref locals, local functions and static local functions, MS Core Lib members like datetime.now, Microsoft Entity Framework, SharePoint, and other third-party libraries. The list goes on. You get the idea. JustMock can mock a lot of things for your unit testing. If you are planning to use JustMock with your ASP.NET Core application, you can find the instructions on the JustMock product page. From the Telerik homepage, go to All Products, select Telerik JustMock, go to Docs and Support, and then scroll down to Documentation. Here you'll see some information about JustMock and how to set it up, why you need it, what you can do with it, what can be mocked. Then under the Getting Started section, you'll find the installation and setup instructions, how to add JustMock to your project, and some code examples of how to use JustMock in your own .NET application. How do you get JustMock? Well, if you're new to Telerik, you can download a free trial. On the Telerik.com homepage, you can select the All Products drop-down and then select Telerik JustMock here. This will take you to the JustMock homepage where you can download the free trial. However, if you are already a DevCraft Complete or a DevCraft Ultimate license holder, you already have access to JustMock, and you can download it from the My Accounts page. Remember, JustMock is always up to date with the latest C# and .NET releases and supports all the latest versions. If you're developing an ASP.NET Core application and want to build quality into your process, you might want to consider automated testing. Test Studio is a set of testing automation tools that can be used by developers and QA engineers. And there are two versions of Test Studio that suit each one of these groups, Test Studio Dev Edition and Test Studio Ultimate. Test Studio Dev Edition is a test automation tool that seamlessly integrates with Visual Studio by means of a built-in plugin. It's been designed from a developer's perspective to provide out-of-the-box functionality for easier and quicker test automation, especially for Telerik DevCraft build applications. Test Studio ensures easy automation of Telerik UI for ASP.NET Core components with ready-to-use translators that optimize UI testing of the apps. During test recording, Test Studio automatically recognizes the Telerik UI components, opens the element, and exposes specific and custom properties in order to perform instant automation and verification actions. You can test your ASP.NET Core application or really any .NET app easily, regardless of complexity or level of interaction, and set stable quality levels across web and responsive web apps. So what's Test Studio Ultimate? Well, if you need to go deeper into your automation efforts, you could explore Test Studio's full-featured set that comes with the Test Studio Ultimate. It's a standalone IDE that includes automated testing for web, WPF, and responsive applications. It has REST API testing, load and performance testing, and it integrates with all the common bug tracking and source control and CI/CD tools, and provides dashboards with reports and results, and more. So while Test Studio Dev Edition is meant to easily integrate into the developer's workflow, Test Studio Ultimate engages developers and QAs into powerful collaboration by allowing them to work in their preferred environment. If you want to take a look at Test Studio's full automated testing capabilities, just navigate to Test Studio from the Telerik.com homepage, go to All Products, then Test Studio, Resources, Documentation, and here you'll be able to find a detailed description of how Test Studio translators help you quickly automate the UI of your application. Congratulations, you've finished the course. We've covered some basic and advanced components that you can use as you develop your own applications, and you'll discover more as you continue learning. I'm glad you joined me on this journey on learning how to use the Telerik set of components and features. My name is Alex Ziskind. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Digitalix over there. And if you have any Telerik UI related questions, go ahead and send them my way. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy using Telerik UI.